Welcome to Belgrade Online. We're glad you decided to join us today. I'm Jodi, and I'll be your host. Here at Belgrade, we hope to encourage you in your journey and explore what that means in new and beautiful ways. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode. Up next, announcements. Then we will see who's having birthdays and anniversaries this week. After that, we will hear from the pastor, the scriptures, and let the Spirit move you with some music before I come back to see you off. Welcome to Belgrade Online.
Well, hey, Belgrade family. Real quick, I want to tell you about a phone call I received this week that was really encouraging to me. I got a call from one of the members of our SPRC committee, which is a team that's kind of like the HR committee of our church. And so her name's Miriam, and she called me and said, "Hey, Dan, I got to tell you, I ran into one of the parents of one of the Boy Scouts this week that meets in our building. And she said, "Oh, you go to Belgrade?" And she said, "Hey, I just got to tell you, you all do so much. You make your space available for the Boy Scouts to meet regularly. You let us park and you use your parking lot, put our trailers in your parking lot, and you house AA meetings, and you open up your office spaces to Young Life, which is the youth organization that serves Mankato. And not only that, but you have the monthly Second Harvest food drive where you give away free food every month in your parking lot." And she said, "Man, you guys just do so much for the community." And Miriam called me and said, "I just wanted to let you know that because I thought that was a great meeting, a good feedback to hear from someone that doesn't go to our church, and I thought that was super encouraging." And so I wanted to let you all know that, because sometimes it can be difficult to know exactly what are we doing at church. Is it just a weekly service for the insiders, or is it just a kind of a fun club where we come once a week and sing a couple songs and hear a message and then leave? But I just wanted to let you know that this is what our church is doing in the community, and not only that, but for those of you that give to our church, I wanted to say thank you, because you're making it possible to be able to reach out and touch our community in these different ways. And we're making it possible for the Boy Scouts to come and have a place for them to come and meet and impact them in their world in that way. And we're making our space available for people in recovery to come, and for our AA meetings and our Al-Anon meetings. And they come here to get healing and just get community and to get freedom from that which is oppressing them in their addictions and recovery. And not only that, but we make it possible for you in your giving, make it possible to house Young Life, which impacts young people all over this area, Mankato and North Mankato and beyond. And so those that are giving, I just want to say thank you, because you're making this ministry possible. And for those that maybe haven't given before, I just want to encourage you, if you're interested in helping make a difference and helping our church make a difference in the community in greater ways and more impactful ways, I would just ask if you would consider partnering with our church in Belgrade Avenue United Methodist Church in partnering with us financially as we continue to find more impactful and greater ways to impact and serve our community around us. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing what we can do together for our community at Belgrade Avenue Church. So thank you. Have a fantastic, fantastic week.
You are cordially invited to dance the night away and celebrate the marriage of Sergio Salgado and Shaylin Kaluski. Come enjoy late night snacks, music, and good company. Friday, July 22nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Country Inn and Suites off Highway 22 in Mankato. We hope to see you there.
The outreach team is completing their final preparations for their August mission trip to Mission, South Dakota. We have a group of 10 people departing on August 7th. We are gathering donations of the following items to bring with us to give to the Tree of Life Ministry, which serves the Lakota people. We ask you to prayerfully consider this opportunity to give. We need shoes that are gently used or new, children's and adults, diapers, any size for infants and toddlers, children's underwear, new, any size, and paperback books for men who are incarcerated. If you would like to purchase gift cards to Amazon, Walmart, or Sam's Club to be donated to Tree of Life, please see Susan and Robin on Sunday morning or call Susan at 507-766-5269. Donations can be left in the lobby on Sunday mornings between July 3rd and July 31st, or can be delivered to the church office weekdays between 9 and 11. please call ahead to make sure someone is there to let you in. We would like to thank you for being so generous to us for this mission trip and for Belgrade Church.
This week's birthdays and anniversaries. On the 17th, happy birthday.
Tina Guth.
On the 17th, happy birthday.
Dan Zimmerli.
On the 18th, happy birthday.
Dan Dempster.
On the 20th, happy birthday.
John Corbett.
On the 20th, happy birthday.
Marianne Dundas.
On the 21st, happy birthday.
Charlie Crandall.
On the 21st, happy birthday.
Alan Miller.
On the 21st, happy birthday.
Doug Storm.
On the 22nd, happy birthday.
Sheena Solinger Jerbeck.
On the 22nd, happy anniversary.
Doug and Shelley Storm.
Have a great week.
Well, hey everyone, Pastor Dan here. Happy Sunday. Hope y'all are having a fantastic weekend so far. Well, we're in the middle of a series called Random Summer Thoughts with Pastor Dan, and that's me. So we've been talking every week about one thought that I've been thinking about throughout the week, and something that I feel like has been ruminating in my heart and mind that maybe God put there. And so I've just been repackaging it every week and giving it to you, and hoping it's meaningful to you. And so this week we're going to keep on with that series. And we are talking about, this morning, toxic flowers. That's right, we're going to talk about toxic flowers. And we're going to talk about how toxic flowers are kind of like anxiety triggers. And if that seems strange to you, good. Keep on watching to figure out what in the world we're going to say about it. So with that said, I hope this is meaningful to you. I hope it's helpful to you as we talk about toxic flowers and anxiety triggers. So keep on watching, stay tuned, and I hope it helps. Have a fantastic week, y'all. Grace and peace. See you soon. Well, hey, good morning, all. We had some technical difficulties in our sanctuary this morning. We didn't have any audio when we checked the video after the service. So I'm going to do a recap. Let's get into it. When I was about 21 years old, I was in a traveling ministry. And I joined this ministry, and I played guitar in a Christian band, and we had as a Christian, sort of a Christian rock praise and worship band, and we had a drama team and a minister. We would travel all around the U.S. at different churches, and we went up to Canada and went overseas. And one of the places we went to overseas was London, England. I loved it in London, and there was about 30 of us on the road, and when we went there, they kind of broke us all up into host homes. They had got some people to open up their homes, and about 2 or 3 of us would go to each house, and we would stay with them for the entire duration that we were in London. And so the family that me and the guy that I stayed with, my host brother, his name is Adam, and so me and Adam on our team, we were staying with this family called the Nashes, John and Caroline Nash in Europe, and in about a half hour outside of London in a small town called West Byfleet. And so they had 2 boys and a girl, and Carolyn cooked all the meals, and we'd sit down and we'd pray, and then we'd eat, and she would cook these amazing meals. And British cooking is a little different than American cooking. It's much less salty, a lot less seasonings, and it's more about tasting the natural flavors of the food rather than all the excessive things that we like here in America. So one night we were sitting down to eat, and Carolyn Nash had made this giant, well, the only thing that we could compare it to here in America would be a chicken pot pie. It was kind of like that. And with that, they had some different sides. They had a little boat of gravy, and they handed out, passed around anyways, this little plate that looked kind of like, white carrot-looking things. And so my host brother and I kind of looked at them, and we were like, what are these? And they said, these are parsnips. Now, there's a number one rule when you go overseas and you're ministering cross-culturally in missions or whatever. The number one rule is eat what's put in front of you and like it, even if you don't like it. Because if you don't, it could be very offensive to people. And you got to kind of get to know who you're going to be ministering to and ministering with if you go cross-culturally. Excuse me. And so as we went there, we knew that we had to eat those things. And we put them on our plate. And as we put them on our plate, we both, my host brother and I, we took one bite and we looked up and we said, "Delicious, please pass the gravy." And we got the gravy and we just soaked them in gravy because, oh my gosh, I don't know if it was the British lack of seasoning or what, but I've learned that day that I don't like parsnips. I don't like them at all. And so this week, something was posted on Facebook about parsnips, and I thought it was interesting, and so I'll kind of relay it to you. Parsnips are a root, right? Kind of like a potato or a carrot. And if they're not tended to, the tops of the root can grow into, what looks like, it's kind of weeds, but it can grow into what looks like flowers. And they can kind of get pretty looking and beautiful, kind of like daffodils and such. They look kind of like the flower that, one of my kids would pick and say, "Here, Mommy, here, Daddy, I picked these for you." But there's just one problem. Parsnips, you can eat them, you can eat the root, and the flowers are pretty, but they're toxic. Parsnips are extremely toxic, and the secret there is the sap that is on these flowers. It kind of excretes a sap kind of thing, and if you get that sap onto your skin, it can turn into a nasty rash, and that rash can turn into a burn, and that in turn can turn into blisters the size of a baseball wherever it touches you on your skin. So the root of a parsnip is edible and it's safe to eat and it's nourishing, but the flowers can burn you. And now, because my ADHD brain is all over the place, and naturally that got me thinking this week about humanity, right? Toxic flowers, edible roots, and humanity. Because as humans, we're capable of doing so much good and being safe places for people, but we can also be capable of hurting each other and burning one another. This is true on a global level, on a societal level, a national level, and it's also true on a small level, a relational level, interpersonally. And this week I was thinking about that small interpersonal relational level, that we as humans, we're good, yet how is it that we end up hurting each other so much, oftentimes completely unintentionally? We say something that's innocent, yet it rubs someone the wrong way. And from their perspective, it can be so hurtful, and it seems like it was absolutely intentional. Our spouse or close friend or partner does something, or coworker does something seemingly insignificant that has nothing to do with us, but it sets us off, and we respond and react in ways that are really snarky or critical, or we thunder back at them, and it takes everybody by surprise out of nowhere. We give something at work an honest go, but it seems to backfire on us, and it leaves others who are kind of on our team or depending on us kind of out on their own and left in the lurch a little bit. We're loving and kind and supportive, yet we can also be selfish and hurtful and cutting. The Lutherans have this theology that we're all saint and sinner all the time at the same time, and it's beautiful. That's true, because we like to categorize things in neat, tidy categories. Good or bad. That person is good, that person is bad, or whatever. But in reality, our lives are, as humans, we're more complex than that, way more complex than that. And life is more messy. Like a parsnip, we can be helpful and nourishing and supportive and safe. Yet if you bump us in the wrong spot, we can burn you. We can burn each other. So I want to look at one of those things that we as humans do that can, without realizing it, burn and hurt one another. I want to look at one of those things, and to do that, let's go to our scripture this morning. And the passage is from Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 34. And this is in the Sermon on the Mount. And in here, Jesus says this. He says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They don't plant or harvest or store away and hoard up in their barns. They don't hoard things, yet your heavenly Father still feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they are? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" I want you to remember those two words, worry and life. Back to that in a second. And why do you worry about clothes, Jesus says? The flowers of the field grow and they don't labor or work or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. And if that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow it's withered and thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? You of little trust. So don't worry, saying, what are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? What should we wear? For those that are pagans and ungodly, they run after all these things, but your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Now, there's a lot in there. We won't be getting to all of it today, but there's one thing I want to look at really quickly, and it's this little word, worry. And depending on which translation you read, this can be translated as worry, or it could appear as another way, and that's anxiety. Now, those two are not the same word. They're very different. They have different connotations. And I believe that the translation should read anxiety. Anxiety, according to the American Psychological Association, is defined as an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, physical changes like increased blood pressure. Feelings and your thoughts and your body, anxiety manifests and comes out in these different ways. When we're anxious, it feels like we're losing control fast, and it's escalating. With loss of control, our thinking goes from worst case scenario thoughts to worst case scenario images and pictures, and we become a victim to total uncertainty. You know, approximately 1/3 of all American adults will be affected by anxiety disorders in their lifetime. However, it's estimated that fewer than half of that number will seek professional treatment. And it's very difficult to work through an anxiety disorder without professional treatment. There's a research professor out of the University of Houston who you may have heard of. His name is Brené Brown. And she compares anxiety to this movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You know, the version from the 70s, where the kids and their parents are on this fun tour of a chocolate factory, but then they get to this part of the movie where they get into this boat on a chocolate river, and they begin going through a dark tunnel, and it turns absolutely frightening, seeing images that don't make sense, and these Oompa Loompas start rowing, and these images are popping up, and they're going faster, and they don't know what's going on, or what's happening, or where it's going to stop. That's anxiety. That's what she says is anxiety. I think that's beautiful, because anxiety can be a state that we live in, like a state that we're in, kind of like, I have anxiety about this upcoming visit to the doctor. It's giving me anxiety about this thing. Or it can be a personality trait, like I tend to be an anxious person in general. I tend to be a worrier, you know. Or it can be an actual disorder, where it's kind of like a state that you're in, but it lasts longer than 6 months, and it starts to infect your actual personality, and it affects your response to your life and your reactions to others. So back to the scripture verse. We go back to Jesus, and he says, don't worry. Now, it's hard to get this in English, and we're just reading it, because sometimes we just read the words, and we don't really think about how they come across. I don't believe Jesus is saying, now, don't worry, as if that helps us not worry, just telling us not to worry. Oh, thank you. You know, I believe he's encouraging us, you don't have to worry. You don't have to let this take root in your life. And it's not something that we get rid of instantly. It's a process that we go through to learn how to cope and to get to the bottom of why we have these worries and anxieties. But let's get to the word here. The word worry in the original Greek that Jesus used is the word merimnao. Merimnao. And it doesn't just mean, worried thoughts. Like I'm worried for my kid, because they're out with their friends and they're going to, be home at midnight, and I'm worried about them. It's not that. It actually means over anxious, overwhelmed, when you're completely overtaken by anxiety and worry and these manifestations in your body where it's completely stymieing your life. It actually comes from a root word, because in English, like, we have root words, like the root word is like run, but then you've got these different conjugations like running, ran, going to run, we will run, we ran, we did run, all these different versions of run. Well, in Greek, the different conjugations of a root word could have completely different implications in different scenarios. And this is one of those things. Because the word merimnaho, it means to be over anxious, overwhelmed completely. However, the root word it comes from, it means to be divided. It means to apportion out, to divvy up, to share something. And it could mean a positive way of divvying things up, or it can be a negative way. And in this case, Jesus uses it in a negative way. To be overwhelmed, over worried, over anxious, over stressed. It means that our focus, our lives is divided. It's ripped apart. And it's overwhelming us in these different areas. In our culture, it breeds that way because we've lived in our culture for so long. It's normal to us to live where we've got something over here fighting for our attention, something over here, something over there, all fighting for our attention. It's like there's doors that are open and they're trying to persuade us to come in this direction. And we feel divided and pulled apart, and it's stressful to the point where it actually affects how we think and how we feel and how we process information. And we get exhausted and fatigued. And it changes how we respond to each other as well. To the point where if you touch us in the wrong spot, just like the pretty flower on a parsnip root, we can burn somebody else. Over worry, over anxiousness. Now, anxiousness is like a state that we're in, and worry is how anxiety comes out. It's the thoughts that come from anxiety. But this word, again, that Jesus talks about is over worry. And then he says, don't worry about your life. Don't be overwhelmed by your life. You don't have to be. And the word life is the word in Greek psyche. It's the seat of our being. It's like our soul, our processing of our emotions, the desires, the well that we live out of, our vitality, our will, It's this place where if we're so divided, it destroys this very seat of who we are, our soul. It pulls us apart. It rips us apart. And so Jesus is saying to worry, to be over anxietied, is to experience anxiety, is to be extremely torn apart, to be divided within the most fundamental area of who we are, our soul, our psyche, our emotions, our mind, our focus, our ability to reason, our resolve. It's this division of focus, and it becomes disorienting, and it slowly destroys us over time. Even oftentimes we don't realize that our lives are producing this element. We might not even realize it's there, but it's very evident to others, and it can be potentially harmful and dangerous to them, just like a toxic plant on an edible root. We all have these things in our lives, these anxieties, and we try to hide them by staying busy or disguise our anxiety by serving others a lot, and it just shades and masks the fact that we can't sit still and face ourselves. We could avoid fear by creating scenarios that distract us from negativity or a negative outcome. We create quirks and personality traits that are endearing to others, but in doing so we can mask the fact that we're hurting and we're anxious inside, over-anxietied, and we develop a thick barrier against others, and it just makes the situation worse, just like the sap on the pretty flowers on a wild parsnip. And if we get too close to others, we burn them. We explode and majorly overreact at our spouse for something very minor because they accidentally said something in a certain way, and it triggered us. Too many of those events and a marriage is going to fail, or a friendship will fail, or a partnership or a co-worker partnership will fail. Our kids ask for something simple, normal thing that kids do all the time. And we shut them down, or we launch into a lecture about not treating us like a servant or something like that, because we're stressed and overwhelmed. And something simple as a question of, when are we going to eat? It sets us off. Or a coworker asks us about a deadline coming up, and we shut down and we don't engage the issue, but instead we launch into avoidance. And because we suffer so much anxiety, we end up hurting our team because the project doesn't get done. And anxiety leads to, in that case, avoidance. And this can come out in other areas as well that all have their own specific nuances that we won't get to today, like stress and overwhelm and anxiety and worry and avoidance and fear and dread and all these things. But as these things sprout up, we dress them up in the pretty flowers to mask our pain, because we're afraid that if we're honest about it,
people will see us as weak. Because, as a responsible adult, you just need to get over those things. You just got to grin and bear it and move on. You got to get tough. And to be admitting that you're dealing with it, we're afraid people might see us as weak. And a lot of times people probably might, because they see it in themselves as weakness. And they're hurting themselves, and they have to grin and bear it, and they've accepted it. But when they're confronted by somebody else who isn't accepting it, they try to put them down so that they don't have to deal with their issues. Now, back to parsnips. There are ways to safely handle them without getting burned. After planting, you can keep the top growth short, not let it grow into a giant bush, You can wear long gloves, long sleeves, long pants, long socks under your long pants, boots, anything to minimize the chances of that sappy, pretty flower touching your skin and burning you. When you go out to harvest the root and pull it out, you got to go 1 or 2 inches below the surface and pull from there. Or the biggest thing, if a partner's toxic, if a parsnip's toxic flower comes in contact with your skin, it actually doesn't immediately burn you unless it's touched by the sunlight. Because the sap only hurts you when it's exposed to sunlight. It's like a perfect storm. The sap needs to grow from the parsnip's flowers, and it needs to touch your skin, and then it needs to be affected by sunlight and the rays of the sun. And that perfect storm is what causes the damage. And if you take precautions, you can minimize the chances for that damage. You can still enjoy the root if parsnips are your thing. And so just like that, our issues have ways of being prevented. And we can deal with our poisonous sap as well. We can do things like getting counseling. I believe everybody should get counseling. It's part of counseling is you learn to identify your triggers. You learn how, when somebody does something or says something and all of a sudden you erupt at them. Or when you accidentally, they erupt at you or you erupt at them and everyone's surprised because it came out of nowhere and it doesn't fit what was actually happening. The severity of how the reaction came didn't fit by what caused the reaction, We learned that somewhere in our past we were hurt and we were dealt a hand that caused us some sort of trauma. And then that area of our lives somehow got hurt again and hurt again and hurt again. And so now it develops this, it's almost like an explosive button. That's what we mean when we say a trigger. Something that's pushed and it activates all the lineage and the multitude of experience of hurt in that one area. And then when somebody just does something that is seemingly unrelated, but it just touches you in the right way, all of that hurt and pain comes out and gets focused on that seemingly unrelated thing that's triggered us. And we had to identify those triggers and then figuring out why those triggers triggered us. What was it in the past? Where was the first time that caused us pain? And then we work through that. We identify, we name those things and those instances in our life, and we bring up the painful memories and we realize, oh, that's what's happening. And then we can find coping strategies that are unique to us, and we can learn practical ways to get a leg up in our specific situations that help us navigate through our sap, And there's all kinds of things. We'll talk some about this next week in another standalone message. However, there's the biggest thing we can do to protect us from the sap is vulnerability. And this is all taken from Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart, by the way, if you want to read more about this. But the number one thing we could do is be vulnerable. We got to be honest with ourselves. We can't fool ourselves and still heal at the same time. We can't avoid our issues and still grow at the same time. We can't pretend that our sap isn't there, because others will continue to be hurt by us. And they recognize it's there anyway. The only one people we're not being honest with and fooling is ourselves. You've heard this adage, hurting people hurt people. Hurting people hurt people. And that's how this goes. We many times hurt people unintentionally because somehow the areas that we have been hurt ends up coming out and hurting others in that same way. Unintentionally. But because all of those past anxieties and triggers and traumas have culminated into creating this state of anxiety within us, and it can really destroy our relationships and our lives. And many times we can excuse ourselves when we when our own issues come out and hurt others, but then we'll thunder at others when theirs rub against us. You know what I'm saying? When others do it, it's an injustice, but when we do it, oh, it's understandable, right? But we need to be honest and vulnerable with ourselves and trusted people who've earned that place in our lives. Not just anybody. People have to earn that right to speak into your lives, right? And we have to earn the right to speak into someone else's life. In the end, we're all wounded people with the potential to wound others. And we will wound others. And we will be wounded by others. We will burn others. And we will be burned by others. But that's why God gives us this little thing called grace. It's a mixture of deep understanding. It doesn't let us off the hook, because grace pulls us forward and it empowers us to be transformed and change. It understands, but it doesn't excuse. And it doesn't shame and it doesn't judge. It understands, and God in his grace sits down next to us and understands. It says, no, it's not right, but don't shame, no shame. We can get through this together. It won't be easy. Grace doesn't make things easy. It makes it possible. All thanks to God's amazing grace. And it's through his grace that God can teach us to eliminate our sap throughout the course of our lives. It doesn't happen instantly. And it offers us a version of ourselves to others that is more like the root of a parsnip, that's safe and healthy and true to who we really are, instead of the beautifying of our toxic traits that actually burn people and hurt people. We're not broken beyond repair. Fundamentally, we're not bad people. We're not horrible people. We're beloved children of the divine force, person behind the universe. We're children of love. But our lives are messy, and we have these issues that can hurt and pain others and burn others. But with God's grace, we can move through them and become a better version of ourselves every day, and a better version of ourselves for those around us. And in turn, we can also be an avenue, a channel of God's grace for others in their anxieties as well. And those are my thoughts on toxic plants. Have a great week.
Sun. I believe in the risen one. I believe I overcome by the power of his blood. Amen. Amen. I'm alive because he lives. Amen. Amen. Let my song join the one that never ends.
everyone, it's me, Jodi. I'm back to see you off. We hope you enjoyed your time with us today and that it was meaningful and life-giving. If you want to stay on top of things at Belgrade and know when we will be back, make sure to click the like button on Facebook or YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And be sure to hit the bell icon to get alerted when the next episode of Belgrade Online is available. Until next time, I'm Jodi. Thank you for watching and have a great week.